A piano prodigy with a fainting disorder gets a draft letter from Uncle Sam and decides his best shot at survival is winning a radio jingle contest. If that sounds like an unusual World War II novel, it is. I'm Carol Cram, host of the Art and Fiction podcast, and my guest today is Herb Williams-Dalgart, author of Jingle Boys. Welcome to the Art and Fiction podcast, Herb.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Carol.
I really enjoyed the Jingle Boys. And one of the things that really struck me was how fresh it felt. So much of World War II fiction focuses on occupied Europe or the front lines, but you've given us Brooklyn, a piano player with a faulty nervous system and a radio jingle contest. So, what drew you to this particular corner of the war?
I think I like to say that World War II is my origin story. I was named for my grandfather, who actually died fighting in World War II. He was from New York. My mom was born in the Bronx, and he died when she wasn't even 2 years old. So she never really got to know him. And because I was named after him, I've always had this lifelong curiosity about him and what his life might have been. And so I think that's what drew me to this as an era to write from.
Yeah.
And I have to invent my own stories because I don't have the benefit of his. For me, that's where it all began, is in with my grandfather.
Because I actually haven't read any novels about the servicemen in the Second World War, especially the American servicemen. So
Yeah.
that was a really wonderful point of view. So where did the jingles come from?
I love music. My
Yeah.
family has always loved music. I know this is one of the things you and I share is a love of music, and it's found its way into our books. And there's just something existential about music, something comforting and warming. And as I endeavor to write about World War II, the music of that era is really fascinating.
Oh,
It's
wonderful.
there's a longing to the most of the music. It's the era where jingles were first developed.
Oh, I
So
didn't know
as
that.
yeah, radio being popular then and people thinking about it, it was right around World War II and thereafter where radio broadcasts were sponsored by products. And so they had these lengthy, interesting jingles that came with it. And as I was examining World War II and recordings of people's voices, jingles kept working their way into the things that I was reviewing. And so it just stuck in my head as being interesting. And as I thought about war and music, how music was an answer to war. It's an element of harmony, and war is disharmony. Music represents order and beauty, and war is chaos and ugliness. It
Yeah.
just felt like an interesting idea to fight war with music. And that idea just stuck with me until I made it more like the literal fighting the war with music. And that was the birth of the idea.
So it really was an original idea. Like that didn't actually happen. They didn't actually use jingles in the war, or as far as we know.
So, as with many ideas that occurred to me, I always wondered, did I make that up or is that a thing? So, part of my research with all the things I write is how crazy am I and is that even feasible? And there is so much interesting lore about the ways in which the United States fought the war. And many people have heard about the Native American code talkers,
Yeah.
where
Mhm.
we had people who are Native American using Native American languages to create and interpret secret messages,
Yeah.
in part because no one in Europe knew the Native American language. It was uniquely American. So that idea stuck with me about what is uniquely American that others may not easily interpret. And radio jingles selling products is uniquely American, at least it was then. And so I
Yes.
started thinking, what if jingles were the place in which secret messages could be hidden. So I did a lot of research on codes and code breaking. And as you can imagine, there's not a lot that's written that's publicly accessible
Yeah.
around that.
I would
There's still a
imagine.
lot of secret stuff we're doing. And so I actually got to go to the New York Public Library and investigate actual military records that have since been declassified around how codes were broken. There's nothing in there to suggest that we use music in that
Yeah.
fashion. But as I thought about the way music is written with chords and notes, it really does resemble codes. And when I think about how Germans did it with the Enigma machine, how codes were written and interpreted, music seemed to be, again, the the place my brain went. And again, a thematic through line. So this is how my brain works when I'm writing. When I can think of something philosophically, thematically that works, and then in practical terms that also works, that's when I know I'm onto something, and the story just generates from there.
That's just a wonderful recap of the creative process. So, are you a musician yourself? Do you have a musical background?
No, my own father worked in printing and publishing, and he worked for a printer that printed record albums and record album inserts and covers for Capitol Records. So my house was filled with music, and my parents were both dancers. So there was a lot of dancing and music in my house. No, none of us were musicians. We were just music lovers obsessively. I think we all always aspire to be musicians, but this is my opportunity to dig in and learn a little bit something about the process of writing and creating music.
Well, because you actually wrote all the jingles and song lyrics yourself, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, there's
That's
about a
that's incredible. How did you
Yeah,
even
thank you.
start?
That this is where I got to have a little bit of fun is I got to learn a little bit about the craft of writing music, and I've done that with Jingle Boys, both for jingles and for songs and the principles. I got to do a lot of research around that. People much smarter than me have written a lot of wonderful things about the process of writing, and there's as much technical skill involved as there is inspiration and writing, and that part of the process I related to as a writer of fiction. So it was really around the technical process and creating that skill set in my protagonist that was the learning process for me.
Let's talk a minute about your protagonist, the wonderful Walter Lipkin.
Yes,
He's
thank you.
a really appealing hero, but of course he has a big problem, his anxiety disorder. So, what drew you to a protagonist whose greatest obstacle is his own brain rather than an external enemy?
Yeah, if it's not clear now to you how much I think about my writing, there's no further place to look than my character development. So I always try to place myself in the minds and in the
Yeah.
living space of my characters so that I can create something authentic. And so one of the things that I did growing up was I was an actor in high school and in college. I was part of the drama club and I surrounded myself with
Oh,
theater people, my favorite people, theater nerds
yes.
out there. I love you. I'm one of you. One of the guys that I acted with suffered from the same condition I dramatize in my book, anxiety neurosis, which is
Oh,
where stress triggers a fainting response. Not a great problem for someone who's endeavors to be an actor on stage. And so I often was the understudy for this guy because everyone was always worried that right before he took the stage, he'd end up on the floor and I'd have to go out. And I'm pleased to say that only happened once, but we were always on hand for this poor fella, and his condition was secret. And I always thought, wow, what a horrible secret to keep. It was embarrassing for him. And our attitudes about mental health at that time are different now. And there wasn't
yes.
a lot of support and open conversations about it. And that always stuck with me. And so when you think about the 1940s, when it was even more problematic, I thought, what an interesting dilemma that might be for someone who was patriotic and willing to serve his country,
Yeah.
but whose condition might prevent it. And revealing that condition might be a threat to him. Also, I wrote Jingle Boys during COVID when everyone suffered, I think, from some level of anxiety. We
We
all
sure did.
did. And so that kind of challenge seemed particularly poignant to me at that time and still does to me, how someone can call upon their braver angels and still be afflicted with this terrible condition. And that to me was the root for where I wanted to grow Wally as a character.
Well, because yeah, one of the themes of the novel really is courage, isn't it? From an unexpected source, like he finds himself
Yep.
through what he has to do.
Yeah, that it's such an appealing theme. It's the theme of my first book, and it's probably going to be a theme I've worked into all my books. I think finding courage and strength in unlikely places
Yeah.
is a wonderful theme. I seek it in the books and movies and content that I consume. It's hopeful to me for people like me who may feel like we're just a small cog in a larger machine that even we can make a difference in the world. It's a hopeful thought. And at times where we're stressed, I find that reassuring. So if I can deliver that small reassurance through my books, I'm always a fan of doing that.
That's interesting to me that as an author, I think this is true for a lot of authors. We do get a theme that we explore over and over in our books. So yours is the theme of courage and finding courage in unexpected places.
I think
Mine is
so.
women and self-actualization.
Yep.
Still similar,
Yeah.
but yeah, because I'm finding the more novels I write, the more I think, oh yeah, same theme. But it's endlessly fascinating, right? All the things you
I
can do.
think this is the secret for all of us writers that our writing is a form of therapy where we work out the things that are important to us. The questions we're asking about our human condition
Yeah,
find their way into our pages, whether we've done that intentionally or unintentionally. And actually, I think that's the humanity that readers connect to.
yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
and this is why I love to write. And I don't feel some people think it's an act of hubris to put your ideas on paper and expect others
Mm,
to read them. But for me, it's a therapeutic act of desperation, maybe more than anything, as I'm working it all out in a fictional way so that I can reflect on that. Maybe in doing that, help other people who may be like me that just feel like that's a hopeful thought. And when we were writing about World War II, as I think many historical fiction writers do,
yeah,
it's really tempting to just be drawn to only the darkness and all the horror. And that's certainly there. And the threat of it is there in my books. But that's not my message. And to a modern audience, I just want to be able to offer something more hopeful without being ignorant of or dismissive of the true challenges and horrors of the war. Those are certainly present on the page and they are there. The scary parts of the war are, in fact, the threat that Wally has to face all along the way. It's the dark cloud over the whole book. But the relationships, the humanity, the wishes of us, the regular routine stuff like falling in love and being
yeah.
afraid of secrets getting out and family dynamics, those are all true no matter what our condition is. And they also find their way into my book. That's the balance I hope to strike when writing historical fiction.
Yes, and you managed that very well because
Oh,
it really
thank
was a
you.
story at its heart about Wally finding himself and
Yeah,
becoming a man, becoming a fully rounded person who could get his confidence back, set against the backdrop of a terrible time, the war.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
within darkness there is light. It was such a refreshing take on the, as I said, I've never read a book like it. I don't know if that's the kind of feedback you've been getting about the books.
You're kind. Yeah, no, I've been very happy that what I set out to do, it appears I've done, and people do, it does resonate for them.
Yeah,
And I think even someone as unique as Wally with skills that may not look like everyone else's and challenges that may not look like everyone else's still offers something familiar to people and they enjoy that. And maybe the fact that it is different makes it interesting, and the fact that it's human makes it relatable. So I hope people see that. It's certainly what I endeavored to do, and I'm glad that seems to work for you. So I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
because I also think all of the main characters, your motley crew of people, they're very relatable because they're just guys. They're not heroes. They're regular people who are thrust into this extraordinary time, which is what happened to everybody in the war, really.
Yeah, yeah. And as I mentioned, my own grandfather fought in World War II and
Mhm.
died in World War II, and he was just a normal guy too. And yet his willingness to serve, his patriotism, and his ultimate sacrifice do make him heroic. And I think that it's easy to create an image of the people that we admire as being superhuman, but I think what's more compelling is to understand them as human, because
Yeah,
that means that their experience and the things that we admire about them are achievable for any of us.
yeah.
And that to me is where there's hope. That's the message that everyone in history that has some notable achievement is also a person. And they also eat and sleep and have fears and fall in love and make mistakes and do bad things and do good things
Yeah.
and are liked and are disliked, just like any of us. And I think creating truly human protagonists is helpful to the world. I think that's where I don't endeavor to create superhuman characters. I really want them to be human, flawed and vulnerable. I think that's
Well,
where that's interesting to me. I think if people are invulnerable
yeah.
and not flawed, I lose interest really quick because I can't relate. I'm
Can't
hugely
relate.
flawed.
Well, fiction is what is, we use fiction to make our lives relatable, to reflect the world,
You
basically.
got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah. Okay.
totally. You do. I think we're all flawed. I think we have to admit that. Or if you're like me, you have plenty of people in your life that like to remind you of that, and that's okay. Keeps us humble and human and focused on the right things. It's all good.
I just wanted to pivot a minute. You're also a screenwriter. So I'm interested that when you sit down to write a novel, what do you have to unlearn, or what about your screenwriting background? What does it give you that other novelists might not have?
That's a fair question. And I'll try to be humble in my answer because you're implying I have something others don't, and I appreciate that. I think one thing I might be bringing to my work as a trained screenwriter, I got a certificate in screenwriting from UCLA. I'm quite proud of that. I enjoy screenwriting, and I liken the two, screenwriting and novel writing, in this way. I say that screenwriting is like writing in black and white, and writing novels is like writing in color. You don't have a
Yeah,
page count requirement. You're not beholden strictly to dialogue or what can be shown on screen. So you have access to characters thinking, or you can describe visual scenery using language that is absent from a movie experience for
yeah.
an audience. So there's things you can do in writing a book you can't do in screenwriting. But one of the things that I learned in screenwriting was pacing.
Mm.
And I think when readers of books today read books differently than they did when books first were written, right? When there was no film available. Now that most readers have seen films, they have expectations around pace. They have expectations around a structured narrative, around the growing excitement that comes with a three-act structure that is typical in a movie. And so I think I bring a modern sensibility when I write historical fiction because I can appeal to what moviegoers expect in a literary environment. So I think I've been told that my books often read like movies, and I love that feedback because I hope that means they're engaged as they would be in a movie. I think the second thing that being trained as a screenwriter does is it puts a lot of emphasis on crisp dialogue. So I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time in using in attending to dialogue as a way to reveal character. So that dialogue is not just about sharing information back and forth. I think this is a trap some writers fall into is they think it's just about telling the story,
Yeah.
but dialogue is best when it's revealing of character. So whether it's what is said or what isn't said, or how something is said, and being brief with the language too. It's how people actually speak. So when you write dialogue, it needs to be hyper realistic because you're taking out all the ums and uhs that usually come with the way we normally talk and carrying just the necessary elements. People don't pontificate in long speeches unless you're writing something for a lawyer giving a closing argument or
Yeah.
something like that. And so efficiency with language, I think, is another thing I learned over and over the hard way in screenwriting that I hope carries over into my novels too. And people seem to like my dialogue too.
It's fast paced. It is quite spare, and you have a wonderful way with language. You've had some really wonderful similes that I went, oh, that's a good one. As a writer
Oh,
myself, I go, oh, I wish I'd
thank
thought
you.
of that one.
Yeah, I know. I love reading people's work, and yours does the same. I love reading your work and other writers too that really press the button for me. Like, that's a clever turn of phrase, and
Yeah.
darn it, I wish I'd thought of
Yeah,
that.
I
You know,
know.
I often go, God, now that it's out there, I can't do it because
Can't
I'd be
use it
stealing.
now. I know.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that
Yeah, well,
feedback.
so it was definitely noticed.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Would you like to do a short reading from the Jingle Boys or Jingle
Oh, I'd
Boys?
love to. That would be great. Yeah, and why don't I start at the beginning since that
Okay.
reveals a little bit less and people can decide for themselves what they think. This starts my first chapter, which is called U.S. War Bonds. Brooklyn, New York, December 1943. Wally Lipkin sat in a rusted deck chair on the rooftop of his Kensington brownstone, knowing it would soon be his time to die. Now that Roosevelt's War Department had lowered the draft age to 18, Wally's number would be up in a week. Before long, he'd find himself aboard a battleship like Mel Lieberman from Apartment 2D, flying a fighter plane like Ralphie Feldman from down the hall, or trudging knee deep through European muck like his pal Johnny Milhauser. All three had enlisted, gone through basic training, and shipped off like the millions of other brave men of his age. But Wally wasn't like Mel or Ralphie or Johnny. Deployment would mean the end for a guy like him, plain and simple.
Oh, you could have gone on. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's how we start. Yeah.
And I love the way in your novel you get right into it quite quickly. Within the first few chapters, you learn about the jingles and the whole sort of premise of the novel, which really kept me riveted. ooh, what's going to happen? And then, and also, no spoilers, but towards the end, I was like, ooh, I couldn't put it down.
Yeah,
It's
thanks. This is again, you want to build an interest in your readers and you hope you can root them both in your character and in the story. The story itself has to be compelling and the
yeah,
characters for sure. If I'm not interested in the character, I really have a hard time sticking with the story.
exactly. But you
You
were
need
lucky
both.
because you're not lucky. You worked for it, but you have a compelling character, but you also had a very compelling situation, a compelling story. That the idea about the whole jingle thing was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yep.
So one of my goals with the Art and Fiction podcast is to inspire other authors. So what's one thing you've learned from writing your historical novels that you didn't know before?
Gosh, that's a great question. Some of what I learn are in the facts that I research, and I find out some things about history that I didn't know. Other things I learned from writing are truths about the human condition that I explored. Maybe one of the things that I learned that was truly fascinating, I'll put in that first category, is a fact about the war. During World War II, many products and components of products were rationed because they were being used for the war effort. And two of the things that were rationed were wood and metal, two important components for building pianos. In World War II, pianos were not being built during the war until the smart people at Steinway went to the US government and convinced the government that men, mostly men, on the front lines really needed music for morale and convinced the US government to release the ability to use some metal and some wood to create pianos. And Steinway did just that. They created something called the Victory Vertical.
Yeah.
It was a vertical piano made with just the necessary tools. They used some other composite materials for the keys rather than ivory for the keys. And they created a durable, small standing piano that was sent to every theater of war during World War II. This was a fact I didn't know when I sat down to write Jingle Boys, and it was a luck of the draw happenstance.
Yeah.
And I was able to work rather dramatically, I think, the introduction of the Victory Vertical into my story based on what I had learned. It just a fascinating item. And luckily, we don't live at a time where things like that are being rationed. So it didn't occur to me to even investigate that. But as I
No.
was exploring the world of my piano playing protagonist, this became an important detail that I found some dramatic purpose for. This was one of the things I think is exciting. And maybe that falls into that second category of what I learned is that it pays to be lucky and do your homework and do some research because you might find some great details along the way that serve your narrative that you may not have thought of when you thought through your story.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really glad to hear that the victory verticals were true because as a piano player myself, I just love that scene when the
Yeah. Oh,
piano comes
thank
down.
you. Yeah, who knew that was true? But it made perfect sense. And I can only imagine what it must have been like in that room with the government official and the representative from Steinway and how much that person had to convince someone to release the ability to produce pianos. Only Steinway was permitted for doing to do it. And those pianos still exist. I've seen a Victory
Wow.
Vertical in a local museum near where I live. I got to see it firsthand. It's painted olive drab green like
Yeah.
the army and it was one that was actually used in the theater of war. Very exciting.
So it actually shows the power of music, how important music is. You know, that
Yeah.
they actually went to the trouble to make these pianos.
Yeah.
That's
Clearly, I was
yeah.
not the only one who felt like there was some transformative power of
No.
music. There were others long before me, smarter than me, that figured that out. And thankfully, they did because it gave me some things to work on with my book.
And so that was some good advice too to authors on research methods is that you just never know. Keep doing your research because you never know what's going to come up.
It's true. And research is a really wonderful part of writing historical fiction.
Yeah.
Some people think that's the hardest part, but for me, it's one of the most exciting parts because I always learn from that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really tempting to use your computer. And now we've got AI to assist us and to do all your research sitting at your desk. But for me, the research really comes alive when if you have the good fortune of being able to visit the locations you're dramatizing. Travel is an important part of my writing budget. So when I'm writing things about the European theater, that's my excuse to convince
Yeah.
my wife to let me go to Europe. and I bring her with me when I do that sometimes. And to be able to smell things and hear
Yeah.
things and taste foods and hear the language, that's just the kind of thing that influences me as a creative person that you can't get just from searching
Oh, no.
online or asking AI to do that.
No, yeah. Fortunately, I haven't worked with AI yet with research because I finished my last book before I really even discovered AI.
Yeah.
I'm using it for grammar, but yeah, I don't know if I'll use it for research. I certainly would never use it for writing, at least
Yeah,
not.
AI is one of those hot topics in writing now. I'm sure many of your writer friends like to talk about it too. And like you, I really don't like the idea of using AI for my writing. I won't do it. For me, the whole point of writing is that I get to do it. So,
Yeah,
and I
it's the
think my readers,
process.
yeah, and I think the readers expect when they see your name on a book that you're the one that's written it. So I wouldn't use it for that purpose. But I will say that AI has made research a little bit easier. I think you still have an extra burden to confirm that what AI is telling you is true. It does what I think is now known as hallucinate. I think of it as lying, but it doesn't it makes stuff up. So in my world, that's lying. So you
It
really have to
does.
cross-reference
Yeah,
your sources, and I do that AI or otherwise. I always find more than one source of information for my facts. But AI does have a way of bringing in resources and consolidating them that saves a lot of time. So
it does.
I can't say I fall into the camp that I'm against AI. I think that's a little would oversimplify it for me. I think I'm selectively supportive. I think that's how I would describe my attitude towards AI.
I agree. I will use it for nonfiction. It's great for dashing off emails and things like
Yeah.
that, responding to, I use it quite a bit with my travel writing
Oh,
because it
yeah.
can like fill in gaps and find things for me that just saves me some time. But when it comes to writing fiction, the whole point about writing fiction is the process, is that sitting down for me in the coffee shop
Totally.
and just hoping something will come
Yeah,
and then
it's that
just
creative
working.
process.
I wouldn't want to give that up. That's the fun
No,
part.
we're exercising a part of our brain that needs exercise when
Yeah,
we write creatively, and I don't want to outsource that part of my process to anybody or
yeah,
anything. That for me is where the joy is found. So
exactly.
I'm
Creating
not
something out of
interested.
nothing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
when
don't know about you, but when you sit down to write a scene, do you know what's going to happen or do you just let it? You might know the big picture, but the actual
Yeah,
scene.
it's funny. I've written about this before. I've been asked if I'm a plotter or a
Yeah,
pantser. And for your listeners that haven't been familiarized with that, plotters are people that map out everything. There's an outline, they've got structure, and they basically paint by their own numbers. They're doing
yeah,
their own writing, but they've structured it from the start. And then there are pantsers, the blank pagers that sit down and wait for the muse to visit them and deliver all the wisdom. And I like to say I'm more of a paraglider
yeah. That's a
which
good one.
yeah, which I define as I have an idea of where I'm going, and I
Yeah,
usually like to have a map. But if the wind blows me in other directions, I'm here for it, and I allow the wind to take me there. So I've sat down with outlines before, and my finished product doesn't look anything like my outline,
yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah,
My characters teach me things along the way. They say things I don't expect them to
yeah,
say. I find something in research, like a victory vertical piano, that takes me in a totally different
yeah,
direction and creates drama I wouldn't have planned for when I sat down for an outline. So I do outline the story. I do have a sense
yeah,
of my beginning, middle, and end. That's the old screenwriter in me that
yeah,
I like to have a little bit of a map. But I'm a fan of drafting and editing, and I think I do more work drafting and editing than I do outlining. I'm
yeah,
more inclined towards that part of the process. But I don't beat myself up if I've gone off the menu or off the reservation, and I don't endeavor to start writing unless I've got an idea of where I'm going, because that often wastes time, and I don't like to do that. I like to know what I'm about to do. So a little bit of both, I think, is the
yeah.
balance.
But that's pretty much what I am too. If I over outline, I actually lose interest
Yeah, it's
because
boring.
then I don't know, it's no fun anymore. But yeah, I
Right,
like
no
to have
discovery.
if I don't know what's going to happen, then I get stuck. But for
Yeah,
just an individual scene, I'm not knowing what's going to happen,
I'm
you
with
know,
you.
because then you can just, you're actually creating in real
Yeah,
time.
I
Yeah,
love that.
people that really outline every little thing, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't like. I made the mistake of trying that and then not writing the novel because I already Yeah. It's no
Yeah,
fun.
there's always room in my thinking for people who are not like me, for whom
Oh
that
yeah.
works. It's really about the finished product. If you can
Yeah.
write a great book and it's all been outlined up and down from the beginning,
Absolutely. Yeah.
more
It's just
power to you. You're not like me, but
but
good
there's
for
many,
you.
many ways of getting there. And actually admire people that can do that.
Yeah.
That's not something.
And I feel equally about the people that just sit in front of a blank page and still can write a coherent
Yeah, I don't know how to do
novel.
that.
I don't know how you get to 300 and 400 pages with a blank page to start with and no idea where it's taking you. I don't know. I don't know how to write that way. I would
Well, you
be
might be able to
confused.
start that way, but pretty soon you got to have an idea
Yeah, pretty
of the
soon you've
big
wandered off
picture.
into the woods. Right. Yeah,
There's some
exactly.
kind of plot.
Yeah. Yeah, that one gives me I'm a little more afraid of the blank page approach than I am of the outlined approach, but neither of them fully captures how I write.
Yeah. It is actually a mystery, isn't it? Even after you've got two novels under your belt, I think it gets a little more difficult actually, not easier the more you write.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I'm working on my third book
Yeah.
now, and I've decided against my own better judgment that this third book is the first of a trilogy. I'm not only thinking about plotting for this novel, but for the other two that have to be interconnected.
Yeah.
I tend to try to up my game each time I sit down to write. Game upper for this book was I'm going to write music for this one, and that proved to be an exciting challenge. This one is I'm writing the first of a trilogy, and I'm writing in 2 points of view. So that's another challenge that I've set for myself. That is how it goes.
I think you do want to challenge yourself with every new book. I find that you want to do something new. So what is your new trilogy about if you're able to share it?
Yeah, again, this is where my own inspiration sort of starts from my personal life. So the first book is called Everything the Sea Brings. And it, as I mentioned, 2 points
Hmm.
of view. One of the points of view is an Irish lighthouse keeper's wife in Northern Ireland. And
Ah,
the other point of view is a sailor who joins the U-boat
okay.
Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, and who washes up on shore of the beneath the lighthouse. And he comes with secrets, and my lighthouse keeper's wife has secrets, and it's about the two of them and their intersection and how their lives have combined to make some drama. So I won't give too much away, but I'm really excited by it because it's really letting me put my mind in two different characters with two different points of view and really explore some unknown history that I
Ah.
think my readers will really enjoy.
You're very good at finding untold stories around World War II, aren't you?
I think that's what the world wants.
Yeah,
It's,
I agree.
World War II fiction is not for everybody. I know that. And I also know that there's already been a lot written about World War II. So for me, the motivation is to write character-driven stories, not battle scenes after battle scenes.
Yeah,
I'm not a military strategist. That's not war time fiction is what I'm writing, not warrior fiction.
yeah.
And so those stories have to have a human heart and have to tell a story that people are not familiar with. And I'm so excited to bring this book forward. I can't write it fast enough, but there's so many things I've learned in my research that I don't think most people know were true in World War II. So I'm excited to reveal some of that. Some of it is research. I've spoken with actual researchers who've written books about it. I've discovered new things, and then I'm combining them in a way I don't think's been done before. It's a big undertaking. I don't want to oversell it because I don't want people to be disappointed, but I hope I'm introducing something new to the world with my new book.
I'm sure you are. I'm excited to find out more about it.
Thank you. If all goes well, it'll be available next year. So stay
The
tuned.
first book, not the whole
The
trilogy.
first book, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other big question is how many books in the series do I need to write before I release the first one? And I think I want to get halfway through the second one when I release the first one so my readers don't have long to wait for the second or third. That would be
Yeah, that's probably a good strategy. I
my
haven't
strategy.
attempted a trilogy yet or even two, but maybe one day.
Yeah, yeah. I just decided there was enough there for me in the story and enough with characters I am really in love with that there's more to the story that I would want to fit than I would want to try and fit in one book. So that started speaking to me. And then as I started thinking about them as separate books with separate themes that are interconnected, it all started to play through for me. So
Oh,
hopefully it's
fantastic.
warranted. Hopefully it makes sense. and it provides my readers with something they want. Saying it out loud to you on your podcast obliges me now to do it. So
Yeah, now you have to do
I
it.
feel good.
Yeah.
Now I just have to go for it. I can't just release one book and call it a day. I owe the world a trilogy now.
Thanks so much, Herb, for chatting with me. This has just been delightful.
Thank you, Carol. Always a pleasure. And I'm so grateful to you and to this podcast for connecting art and fiction. I think what you're doing is really important. And I think it really reflects how a lot of people think. So good for you. And thank you for being a platform to support writers.